The Mafia boss thought he left his past behind, until one hospital door changed everything. Behind it, the woman he betrayed, and the children he never knew existed. What he sees will destroy him, or finally make him fight for everything he lost. Watch closely, some secrets never stay buried. Aiden Cross was a maid for classrooms. The lecture hall smelled faintly of chalk dust and stale coffee. Students shuffled papers, tapped on laptops, whispered behind raised hands. Yet all eyes drifted to him. He sat at the back, perfectly still, posture rigid, expression unreadable. Blue eyes, colder than ice, swept across the room, calculating, alert. Every slight movement in the hall registered with him, yet he never flinched, never moved. He was a predator disguised as a student. Whispers passed like currents. That's Aiden Cross. He's the one they say runs half the city's underworld already. Is he dangerous? None of it mattered to him. Emily Hart entered the hall, unaware of the storm that sat at the back. She carried herself with quiet confidence, a backpack slung over one shoulder, hair tied in a loose ponytail, eyes alert, scanning the room. She wasn't afraid. Most students froze, shuffled, avoided his gaze. Emily walked straight past them. She stopped beside him and smiled, bright but curious, almost like sunlight cutting through the shadow of his presence. Aiden's icy gaze flickered a small, involuntary movement, the first sign that something had touched him. Annoyance, curiosity. He wasn't sure which. He didn't like attention, yet there was something about her that pricked a part of him he didn't know existed. "You're sitting here?" she asked, tilting her head, faint amusement in her voice. He said nothing. His eyes met hers, piercing, assessing. She didn't falter. Most did. Most stumbled, fumbled, lowered their gaze. Not her. I didn't think anyone would. She trailed off, glancing at the empty seat beside him. Mind if I sit? He merely nodded, subtle, unreadable. Her pen clicked against her notebook. She tried to ignore him, tried to focus on the lecture, but something in the corner of her eye drew her back to him. He scribbled nothing in his notebook. He didn't need to. Every detail of the lecture, the room, the people, was etched in his mind, observed, stored, calculated. She couldn't help but notice the faint tension in his jaw, the way his eyes never rested, the subtle tightening of his hands against the desk. "Are you always this intense?" she asked quietly, half joking, half curious. He glanced at her, a fleeting smirk almost imperceptible, then returned his attention forward. Something electric passed between them, a brush of understanding, a recognition. He was alone in ways no one could touch, and she wasn't afraid of him. For the first time, Aiden felt something unfamiliar. Seen, not feared, not admired from afar. Seen. The lecture drone of the professor faded into white noise for him. He didn't hear the monotone of economics formulas. All he saw was her. After class, she stood, sliding her notebook into her bag. "Hey, maybe we can grab coffee?" she asked, her tone casual, like it was the simplest thing in the world. He paused. A fraction of a second, a blink. Then he said, "Sure." It was strange. The words left his lips lighter than he expected. Words he hadn't used in years in casual conversation. His life was discipline, shadow, and control. Words didn't come easily. Yet with her, something shifted. They walked out together. The campus stretched before them, sprawling lawns, brick buildings, banners flapping in the wind. Students passed, glances darting, whispers rising again. She laughed at something he said, a small, genuine sound, and for a fleeting moment, he let it in. A warmth he hadn't known in years crept into his chest, but the moment shattered. His phone buzzed. Subtle vibration against his hip. He glanced down. Name flashing, unknown. He answered. Voice clipped, controlled. "Aiden, your father is gone. You inherit everything." The words struck him like a bullet through bone. He froze. Heart thudded. Mind raced. His father, dead? And he was in charge? Not tomorrow. Not next week. Now. Immediately, everything he had avoided, everything he had kept at arm's length, every secret, every power move, every dark choice, was suddenly his responsibility. He didn't speak. He didn't blink. Emily's smile faltered. The warmth faded. Something dark passed over his face, a mask settling in seconds, chilling and absolute. The boy she had met minutes ago, the one capable of humor, of small human moments, vanished. In his place stood the air, the boss, the storm. He turned sharply, walking toward the exit. Every step was deliberate, controlled. The campus felt smaller now, insignificant, as if the entire world bent to the weight he suddenly carried. Emily followed, just a step behind, heart pounding. He reached the main gate, and then the sound came, low, mechanical, powerful. Armored vehicles rolled up the driveway, engines growling, black, polished, silent threats. Guards stepped out. Emily froze. Her eyes widened. The whispers of students had turned into gasps. Phones lifted, cameras snapping. Aiden walked straight toward the first vehicle. He didn't look back. He didn't hesitate. She watched him enter the black SUV. One vehicle became two, then three. Engines revving, lights flashing, convoy forming. Students scattered. Emily stood frozen on the sidewalk, 1,000 questions running through her mind. Who was he really? How could someone so young hold this power? And why? Why did her chest feel like it had been hollowed out by the sudden weight of something she couldn't name? She clenched her fists, heart pounding, but didn't move. The convoy disappeared around the corner, taillights fading like the last remnants of a storm. Her stomach churned. Fear, awe, curiosity, something darker. She knew this wasn't just a boy from class anymore. This was a man who ruled shadows, whose life touched hers, and whose path she had just glimpsed. A path she had no idea would intersect with hers again. Emily's gaze lingered on the empty street. Her hand brushed her bag strap, shaking slightly. Somewhere deep in her chest, a spark ignited, a dangerous curiosity, because this was only the beginning, and she had no idea how far down the rabbit hole she had just stepped. From around the corner, a figure watches the convoy. A sharp glint of metal catches the sunlight, a silenced pistol tucked in the waistband. Aiden's world, Emily's world, and the life they were about to ignite were about to collide in ways neither of them could ever anticipate. The city was a labyrinth of lights and shadows, a place where secrets lived in every corner, and danger lingered behind every familiar street. For Aiden Cross, New York had always been a stage of calculated moves, measured risks, and unseen threats. But when he thought of Emily Hart, the entire city fell away. It began innocently enough. Coffee after class. Just two people sitting in a small cafe tucked between brick walls, the aroma of roasted beans masking the tension that lingered between them. Students passed outside the window, unaware of the silent storm brewing behind the glass. Aiden was quiet, as always, but now, when he spoke, his words carried weight, subtle hints of vulnerability that no one else ever glimpsed. Emily, for her part, didn't flinch. She listened, her blue eyes bright, probing, not afraid of the man hidden beneath the fog of control. Do you ever just stop? She asked one evening, watching him stir sugar into his coffee with meticulous precision. Stop what? He replied, voice low, smooth, untouched by emotion. Everything. Pretending, hiding, carrying the world on your shoulders like it's all yours to bear. He paused, his hand hovering over the spoon. For a moment, the city noise vanished. The air felt thick, charged, alive. Something flickered in his eyes, the faintest acknowledgement that she had seen him not as the young Mafia heir, but as the boy beneath. From there, the routine grew dangerous in its own quiet way. Study sessions became longer. Discussions drifted from lectures to confessions. I don't trust easily, he said one night, voice barely audible over the soft hum of the hotel air conditioner. She leaned forward, elbows on the table. I don't want your trust. I want you to be honest with me. That's all I need. The line between friendship and something more blurred with every hour, every word. every glance shared in the dimly lit room. Soon, the coffee tables weren't enough. The late-night walks down empty streets under the glow of sodium lamps became their ritual. They walked side by side, shoulders brushing, neither speaking, yet both understanding. It wasn't just companionship. It was sanctuary. Aiden's apartment remained off limits to her, but hotel rooms became their refuge, neutral ground, a place where he could drop the mask and she could see the cracks in his armor. They sat together on the edge of king-sized beds, the city skyline flickering through the window. Words flowed, fears, dreams, fragments of their pasts they never shared with anyone else. Each confession was a thread, stitching them closer, binding their hearts in ways neither fully understood. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" she asked one night, voice soft, almost trembling. Aiden didn't answer immediately. He stared at the glass of water in front of him, seeing not the liquid but the reflection of everything he was hiding, everything he would have to protect her from. "I try not to," he finally whispered. "But sometimes I can't stop." She reached out, lightly brushing her fingers against his. Just a touch, but it carried warmth, recognition, a promise that whatever the shadows held, they would face it together, even if they didn't yet realize what that would cost them. Yet the world outside their bubble never slept. Danger lingered, silent, patient. Shadows stretched along alleys, across the corridors of hotels, into rooms they thought were private. And Aiden knew it. One night, after a session that had stretched until past midnight, Aiden walked her to the door of their suite. The city lights spilled into the hallway, casting long, distorted shadows. He paused, fingers brushing against the cold brass handle. "Emily." His voice faltered for the first time, soft, fragile. "If I ever disappear, it's not because I wanted to." Her eyes widened, searching his, heart tightening. "What do you mean?" He shook his head, just enough to hide the fear clawing at him. "Nothing. Forget I said it, but it wasn't nothing, because someone was watching." A single silhouette, hidden in the shadows of the opposite hotel floor, held a camera aimed at their suite, a lens reflecting the dim light, capturing every smile, every whispered word, every unguarded moment. Aiden didn't know it yet, but the first seeds of danger had already been planted. Emily lingered in the doorway, hesitation in her stance. You're not like everyone else, are you?" Aiden's lips twitched, not quite a smile. "No one else matters here." "Only this," he said, gesturing vaguely between them. "Only you." Her heart skipped, but instinct told her something she couldn't name. A chill beneath the warmth, an echo of danger threading through the comfort. He left her that night with a lingering touch on her hand, a whisper against her ear. "Trust me, Emily. Whatever comes, we survive." Together, as she closed the door, her back pressed against the wood, the weight of the unspoken words pressed down on her. Something powerful, magnetic, but perilous had begun. Outside, the city continued its restless hum. Horns blared, neon signs flickered. A single figure slipped into the alley across the street, disappearing into shadows with the precision of someone trained to wait, to observe, to strike. Aiden didn't know yet. He never saw them, but the danger was real. It had always been real, and it was closer than he could imagine. The night stretched, long and silent. Emily sat on the bed, tracing the edge of a hotel lamp with her fingers, unaware that every moment of safety was borrowed, that someone was counting, watching, measuring. Aiden returned to his own room, pacing, hands clenched, mind racing. Something primal and unspoken stirred inside him, a need to protect, to shield, to control what had always been beyond his grasp. He knew the world he lived in could swallow him whole, could swallow her whole, and he knew, without hesitation, that he would kill to keep her safe, even if she never knew it. The first true test had yet to come, and when it did, neither of them would be ready. From a shadowed corner of the hotel, the observer's phone buzzed. Aiden's name appeared on the screen, a single message typed, chilling in its simplicity. "She's all we need to get to him. Make the move." The camera lens adjusted, zooming in on Emily as she laughed quietly, unaware that the danger closing in on her was tied directly to the man she loved and that the secret nights they cherished were about to ignite a storm. Neither could escape. The chapel was silent except for the faint hum of the old chandelier overhead. Dust motes danced in the golden light filtering through stained glass, catching Emily's hair as if igniting it from within. She walked down the narrow aisle, each step deliberate, each breath steadying her trembling heart. Aiden waited at the end, his suit tailored to perfection, his posture as rigid as the steel in his veins. Yet beneath the cold exterior, a tremor ran through him that no one would ever see. Not the council, not his men, not the world that feared him. Only Emily might have glimpsed it. There were no guests, no fanfare, no smiles of approval from family or friends. Only the two of them, standing in the shadow of silence, holding hands as if that alone could anchor them against the storm they both knew was coming. For a moment, time seemed to pause. Emily searched his eyes, looking for the boy she once knew. The boy who had laughed, teased, and shared quiet moments over coffee and late-night conversations. But those eyes were deeper now, filled with responsibility, burden, and shadows too heavy for her to lift. "Are we really doing this?" she whispered, barely audible. Aiden squeezed her hand, thumb brushing her knuckles. "We are. For now. Just for now." His voice was softer than she expected, almost human, almost vulnerable. A fleeting moment, but enough to make her heart beat faster. The ceremony was brief. Words were spoken, vows exchanged, promises that neither fully understood, promises that carried weight heavier than gold or blood. Afterward, they left the chapel quietly, walking through the empty streets. The world outside had not stopped. It did not care about love, hope, or fragile happiness. But for now, it was theirs, stolen, delicate, and fleeting. The first weeks were quiet. Aiden tried, in his own way. He cooked simple dinners, took her on walks down cobblestone streets that smelled faintly of rain, and occasionally, in the dark of their shared room, spoke of trivial things that had nothing to do with power, empire, or the shadowy life that waited outside. Emily cherished those moments. They were a fragile kind of peace, a brief rebellion against the destiny that hung over him like a guillotine. But the world outside refused to wait. The Mafia council had begun to stir. Whispers reached Aiden through channels he could not ignore. Letters slipped under his door. Men approached him in streets cloaked by night. His father's old allies, loyal and relentless, made it clear. He had a choice: rise in power, command the empire that had been left to him, cement his position, crush every rival before they had the chance to rise, or lose everything. The decision weighed on him like a stone in his chest. Every late night spent with Emily, every laugh, every touch, was now a luxury he could not afford. Love was a risk. Hope was a liability. He wrestled with the choice, pacing in the dim light of their shared suite, hands clenched at his sides. For hours, he weighed the cost of happiness against the cost of power. Finally, he made his decision. The empire came first. Always first. Emily slept unaware, curled under the blankets with a faint smile that had nothing to do with the shadows that awaited her husband. Aiden lingered in the doorway, looking at her face one last time. Her chest rose and fell in the innocence of her trust, and something inside him cracked. He whispered her name once. Emily. No answer. Only the soft hum of the city seeping through the windows. Without another word, he left. Quietly, methodically. No goodbye, no note, no promise of return. Just a door closing behind him and the echo of absence filling the room. Outside, the streets were alive with movement. The city's pulse was constant, relentless. Aiden walked into the night, his silhouette swallowed by shadows, blending with the darkness he had chosen over love. Emily awoke hours later, the first light of dawn filtering through the blinds. The room felt colder, emptier. She called his name softly, a tremor in her voice. The emptiness responded with silence. Panic settled in slowly. a creeping shadow across her chest. She checked her phone. Nothing. Not a message. Not a call. Not even a trace of the man who had promised her sanctuary in a world that offered none. She sank onto the edge of the bed, knees drawn to her chest. The warmth of the night was gone. Only the cold remained. Only the realization that he had chosen the empire over them, over her, over the fragile hope they had nurtured. The day blurred. Meals went uneaten. Work went unfinished. Emily wandered through the apartment, touching the places where he had been, searching for the warmth, the life, the presence that had vanished. Then, as the sun dipped low in the sky, she felt it. A sudden, sharp twist in her body, an unfamiliar fluttering deep within. She froze. Heart racing, hands trembling, a thought struck her with the force of a cannon blast. I'm pregnant. The realization was both terrifying and exhilarating. A wave of emotions crashed over her: fear, hope, anger, disbelief. Aiden had left, yet life he had helped create was forming inside her. The world, which had felt unbearably silent and empty, now pulsed with a new urgency. A responsibility she hadn't anticipated, a bond she hadn't asked for, a life that demanded her attention. She sat on the floor, back against the wall, staring at the fading light streaming through the window. Tears ran unchecked, burning paths down her cheeks. For a moment, she thought of leaving, of running. But where could she go that he couldn't find her? Where could she hide from the consequences of the empire he had chosen over them? And then, anger rose. Not just at him, but at the world. At the unfairness, at the cruelty, at the reality that love had been a fleeting illusion, a fragile dream shattered by necessity and duty. Yet beneath it all, something else stirred. A quiet strength, fragile but real. She had survived before. She could survive again. Her hand pressed to her stomach instinctively. She could protect this new life. She could build something he had abandoned. Something no one could take from her. But a shadow fell across the room. Even as the sun disappeared behind the city skyline, outside, the streets were alive with movement she could not see, with eyes that watched, with intentions that would not wait. Aiden was gone. But the consequences of his choice were already in motion. The night stretched on, silent and threatening. Emily sat alone, feeling the weight of life, betrayal, and the world he had left behind. From a darkened alley, a figure stepped forward, phone in hand. A single message was sent, silent but deliberate. The boss has chosen the empire over her. It's time we make sure she never forgets him, or what he left behind. Somewhere in the city, plans were being set in motion. Emily's life, her unborn child, and the fragile hope of love were now targets of forces she didn't even know existed, and the next move would change everything. The apartment was quiet. The kind of silence that presses against the chest and makes every thought feel like a weight. Emily sat cross-legged on the floor, staring at the blank notebook in front of her. For a moment, it felt impossible to write, to plan, to imagine a future that didn't include Aiden. She cried once. Only once. The tears were hot, unchecked, rolling down her cheeks like fire carving paths through her heart. They burned, yes, but they also cleansed. Each sob shook her body, but it was the release she had been holding for months. Since the night he had walked out, leaving everything, their fragile marriage, their love behind. When the crying stopped, she made a choice. A choice that would define the rest of her life. No one would see her crumble again. Not Aiden, not the world, not the shadows that waited to devour her. She rose from the floor, wiped her tears, and stared at her reflection in the window. The city lights flickered across her face. She did not recognize the girl staring back. She was no longer the woman who had trusted too easily, who had believed that love alone could save someone. That girl was gone. Emily's fingers hovered over the keyboard of her laptop. The first few attempts to write felt awkward, fumbling, but she forced herself to continue. Hours became days, and days became nights. She learned the rhythm of the market, the way money moved, the subtleties of negotiation. Each failure was a lesson. Each victory, a reminder that she could survive not because of anyone else, but because of herself. Her pregnancy had been an added weight, a challenge she had not anticipated. The small life growing inside her demanded attention, protection, and planning. Every decision she made from that point forward had to account for more than just her. For the first time, she considered someone else's future as seriously as her own. She walked through her apartment, now filled with stacks of business books, contracts, and documents. Where there had once been emptiness, she built structure. Where there had once been fear, she built strategy. The soft laughter she sometimes heard from neighbors felt foreign, but even that was a reminder that life outside her grief still existed. Emily worked tirelessly. Mornings were consumed by planning and calls. Afternoons by meetings, negotiations, and research. Nights were for reflection, strategy, and journaling. She refused to allow herself to linger on memories of Aiden, though they were never far from her mind. Every time she thought of him, she transformed the longing into fuel, a sharpened edge that cut through fear, hesitation, and uncertainty. By the time the twins arrived, the city had become her crucible. Sleepless nights, relentless days, and constant mental strain had forged her into someone unrecognizable to the woman who once loved Aiden so completely. She held the newborns, feeling a strength she never imagined she possessed. Each tiny hand wrapped around her finger was a reminder of her resilience, a symbol that she could nurture life even when abandoned by love. Her reflection in the mirror no longer showed a fragile girl but a woman of steel, tempered by grief, sharpened by experience. She smiled faintly at herself, a private acknowledgement of victory, not over Aiden, not over fate, but over the version of herself that had once been vulnerable and easy to break. She built a company from scratch, starting small but dreaming big. Every deal, every handshake, every calculated risk carried a piece of her story, a silent declaration that she was no longer a victim. Emily became a force in the business world, young, sharp, and unyielding. Her name began circulating in whispers, then headlines. She was a rising star, someone to watch, someone to fear, someone to respect, and all of it was without him. On a crisp autumn evening, Emily sat in her office overlooking the city skyline. The twins slept peacefully in a nearby room, unaware of the world outside. She sipped her coffee, her mind racing with ideas, contracts, and strategies. Her phone buzzed with notifications from her growing empire, each ping a heartbeat of her success. Then, without warning, the television in the corner of the office flickered to life. A news channel she rarely watched filled the room with a familiar voice. The camera panned over the anchor, then cut to her, Emily Hart, seated confidently, answering questions about her company, her rise, her achievements. She spoke with poise, intelligence, and a quiet fire that captivated viewers. Unbeknownst to her, someone far away was watching. Aiden Cross sat in a penthouse high above the city, the neon lights reflecting off his eyes. He hadn't moved. He hadn't spoken since the screen flickered to life. The image of Emily, radiant, confident, untouchable, filled the room. His chest tightened, and for the first time in years, he felt powerless. She had survived, thrived, succeeded. Without him, his expression remained unreadable, a mask perfected over years of controlling empires, but inside, something fractured. Regret, pain, desire, anguish. He had left, thinking he had protected her by choosing power over love. He had walked away, thinking it was the only way to survive in a world built on blood, loyalty, and fear. Now he realized he hadn't protected her at all. He had abandoned her. A flicker of the old pain surged through him, the kind that gnawed at the bones. Every choice he had made to maintain control, to secure the empire, suddenly felt hollow, meaningless. Emily Hart, the woman he had loved, the woman he had left, had transformed herself into someone he could barely comprehend. Stronger, sharper, untouchable. A force that existed whether he chose to acknowledge it or not. Aiden sat back in his chair, hands gripping the armrests, jaw clenched. The world outside his window continued. Oblivious to the storm brewing inside him, he realized in that moment that the empire he fought to protect meant nothing if he had lost the person who had once made him feel human. The news segment ended. Emily's image faded from the screen, replaced by anchors discussing mundane city affairs. Yet the imprint remained a reminder, a wound, a challenge. He could no longer pretend that the choices he had made were correct, could no longer hide behind power, influence, and fear. Something deeper called to him, a voice he had tried to ignore. You lost her. And now, if you want her back, you have to fight for her, not the empire. Aiden's fingers strummed on the desk, a rhythm of tension and unresolved emotion. The city lights painted sharp shadows across his face, highlighting the cracks beneath the surface of the Mafia boss everyone feared. Every instinct screamed at him. Protect, reach out, reclaim. But he hesitated. The risks were too high, the stakes too dangerous. And yet, the thought of leaving her life untouched, watching her thrive while he remained a ghost in her past, was unbearable. Somewhere deep inside, he knew the battle lines were being drawn. This wasn't just about him. It wasn't just about Emily. It was about what she had built, what they had shared, and the fragile remnants of trust that lingered, unspoken, unresolved. From a darkened street below Emily's office, a black car idled, engine silent. Inside, a man in a tailored suit spoke into a phone, voice low, measured. She's stronger than we anticipated. But the boss must see what he lost. Make sure she knows we are watching, high above the city. Aiden remained unaware that the next move had already begun, a move that would intertwine Emily's success with danger, and force him to confront the consequences of the empire he had chosen over love. The city had changed, but not entirely. Manhattan still pulsed with its relentless energy, the kind that could swallow a person whole and leave nothing but echoes behind. Neon signs glared over wet streets, reflecting in puddles like shards of broken promises. It was here, amid the hum of cars and distant sirens, that Emily Hart stepped out of her sleek black car, heels clicking sharply against the sidewalk. She wore confidence like armor. Each movement was precise, calculated. Her tailored dress hugged her form without effort, exuding power, grace, and authority. The twins were with a trusted caretaker, safe at home, allowing her this rare evening in the city. Inside the restaurant, the atmosphere was muted elegance. Soft jazz floated through the air, blending with the low murmur of conversation. Candlelight flickered against glass tables, making shadows dance across the walls. Aiden Cross sat at a corner table alone, reviewing documents that barely held his attention. The blue in his eyes was sharper than the winter night outside, cold but alert. The world around him faded as soon as the restaurant door opened. She walked in. Emily, time fractured. He stood too quickly, a subtle misstep that even his years of discipline couldn't hide. His breath caught. The paper slipped from his hands, clattering to the marble floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the entire room. She didn't flinch. Her gaze was steady, unbroken. No tremor, no hesitation. Untouchable. The woman who had rebuilt herself in a world that had tried to break her stood before him, fully realized, fully formidable. Aiden's hands curled into fists at his sides. He wanted to speak, to reach out, to undo years of absence in a single word, but the words caught in his throat, choked by the weight of his own guilt. Emily approached, heels whispering against the polished floor. Her eyes locked with his, and for a moment, the past and present collided like storm-driven waves. Whatever we had, she said, voice calm but sharp, died the night you left. It was neither accusation nor plea. It was fact, cold, immutable. Her words struck him harder than any blow. His chest tightened. The regret carved into his heart deepened, a pain he had never allowed himself to feel fully. He began, but the syllable died on his lips. The calm of the moment shattered. A sharp, metallic crack echoed from outside. His eyes snapped to the window. A red dot bloomed on Emily's shoulder, glowing ominously against the warm lighting. Get down. Aiden's voice dropped low, dangerous, authoritative, filled with urgency and command. Emily reacted instantly, diving to the floor, pulling her chair with her. Aiden was beside her in a heartbeat, a protective wall of muscle and resolve. His every movement was precise, trained, lethal. Glass exploded outward as the first bullet hit the window, shattering it into glittering shards. Crystal fragments rained down like jagged snow, some landing dangerously close to the patrons. Chaos erupted. Chairs toppled, screams pierced the jazz, and the restaurant descended into controlled panic. Aiden pressed Emily behind his broad frame, his eyes scanning, calculating, moving faster than any normal human could. Stay down. Don't move, he ordered, voice low but carrying the weight of absolute authority. Emily's mind raced. She was terrified, yes, but she had survived worse than this. Her body pressed against his, instincts kicking in. Calculating escape routes, noting exits, evaluating threats. Aiden's gaze caught a glint from across the street, a sniper's scope, barely visible against the neon reflections. His heart didn't race. It calculated. Every muscle coiled. Every option weighed. A second shot struck the table near them, splintering wood and glass. Heat and panic mingled in the air. Emily's voice trembled slightly, barely audible over the chaos. Aiden, who is sh? He cut her off, jaw tight. Do not speak. Move when I tell you. His hands gripped hers briefly, steadying her, grounding her against the storm. She felt the pulse of control radiating from him, the unshakable presence that had once drawn her to him, now a lifeline in the midst of mortal danger. Patrons screamed, ducking, diving for cover. The staff scattered, knocking over plates and chairs. Yet Aiden's focus never wavered. His eyes locked on the red dot again. It pulsed slightly as the sniper adjusted. Listen to me, he said, voice dropping lower, almost a growl. You stay behind me. Nothing happens to you. Not tonight, Emily swallowed, nodding. Fear and trust warred inside her, but she moved as instructed, pressing closer to him. Aiden's mind raced, calculating trajectory, distance, wind, bullet drop, every factor that could save her. He knew the sniper wasn't random. This was planned, targeted, precise, the kind of threat only someone who knew her existence, and perhaps her connection to him, could orchestrate. The restaurant doors rattled. A waiter tried to flee, only to stumble against a toppled table. Aiden's hand shot out, gripping the man, throwing him behind a column. Move, now! Emily followed without question, every instinct screaming survival, every nerve tuned to his movements. Another bullet shattered a wine bottle on a nearby table. Red liquid sprayed like a warning, staining the white tablecloth. The patrons screamed again, ducking behind overturned chairs, their fear tangible in the thick air. Aiden's teeth clenched. He moved, precise, swift, taking cover behind the broken marble bar. Emily followed, crouching, barely breathing. The sniper's red dot shifted, momentarily disappearing, then reappearing on the chandelier above. Bullets ricocheted off the ceiling. Sparks flew. Aiden caught a flash of movement, someone at the back door. Too close, too fast. He gritted his teeth, pivoted, taking the assailant down with a single, fluid motion. A strike trained from years of violence and control. Emily's eyes widened as she watched him move, lethal, flawless, terrifying. The man she had once loved, the boy she had trusted, had transformed into a predator in his element. Every action precise, calculated, deadly. Her stomach twisted. Fear and fascination warred inside her. Aiden looked back at her for a brief instant. Stay with me, he ordered, voice low but trembling just slightly, just enough to betray the intensity of his emotion. She nodded, silently. From across the street, a shadow moved. The sniper wasn't finished. The red dot reappeared, aiming again. Aiden's eyes narrowed. Every muscle tensed. Every heartbeat synchronized with the danger. The world slowed. Only two things existed in that moment. Emily and the threat above. the lethal intention that had followed them into the sanctuary of the restaurant. Another shot rang out. The glass between them exploded in a shower of shards. Glittering, dangerous, unstoppable, Emily cried out, instinctively shielding herself behind Aiden. His body absorbed the impact of the chaos around them. A living wall between her and the storm of bullets and shattered glass. Every second stretched, endless, brutal. Every heartbeat screamed danger. Every breath threatened the fragile thread of life holding them together. And then, the red dot disappeared. Aiden's gaze scanned, sharp, searching, calculating. He knew it wasn't over. It would never be over. Emily's hand trembled slightly as it brushed against his arm. Fear, adrenaline, and something unspoken surged between them. She whispered, voice trembling, Aiden, what now? His eyes, cold but burning, fixed on the street outside. Now, we survive, together, or we die trying. From the shadows across the street, a second sniper emerged, voice quiet in a calm device. He's here. She's with him. Target confirmed. Begin phase 2. Aiden didn't hear it. Emily didn't know it. But the night was far from over. And in the seconds to come, nothing would be the same again. The sound of shattering glass still echoed in the restaurant, mingling with screams, the clatter of overturned chairs, and the sharp metallic ping of bullets ricocheting against walls. Aiden Cross moved like a force of nature. Every muscle coiled, every movement precise. His eyes scanned the room, sharp as blades, calculating every threat. Emily's hand was trembling as she tried to stand, but the chaos made her stumble. Before she could regain her balance, Aiden lunged, catching her in a swift practice motion. He tackled her to the floor, pressing her body flat against the marble. Stay down. Move, he barked, voice sharp, deadly. The restaurant erupted around them. Patrons scrambled for cover, chairs toppled, plates shattered, and the shattered glass glittered like lethal confetti. Adrenaline and fear hung thick in the air, mixing with the faint scent of spilled wine and burnt candle wax. Aiden's mind raced. Every second counted. Every decision could be the difference between life and death. His hand gripped her arm, dragging her toward the side exit with swift, efficient precision. Keep low. Now, he snapped. Emily clung to him, heart pounding, body pressed against the strength and warmth of the man who had once walked away from her. She saw the switch the moment the boy she had loved became the ruthless boss, the predator who ruled the underworld with lethal precision. His eyes, blue and sharp, darted constantly, absorbing everything. Every angle, every shadow, every potential threat. His hands weren't just guiding her. They were protecting, shielding, calculating. The night outside hit them like a cold wave. Neon reflections danced across rain-slicked streets, casting flickering patterns on the pavement. Sirens wailed in the distance, oblivious to the storm unfolding on this corner of Manhattan. Aiden barked orders to the men who had followed, sleek black-suited figures appearing like ghosts from the shadows. Each moved with efficiency, forming a protective perimeter around Emily, their weapons ready. Their eyes scanning the rooftops and alleys. Emily tried to catch her breath, chest heaving, hands gripping the fabric of his coat. Fear, confusion, and awe coursed through her simultaneously. What's happening? She asked, voice barely audible over the distant sirens and ringing adrenaline. Aiden's jaw tightened. He didn't answer immediately, eyes locked on the streets, scanning. Then, his lieutenant stepped closer, voice low, urgent. Boss, that sniper wasn't after you. He was after her. Emily froze. Pale drained the color from her face. Her hand went instinctively to her stomach, clutching the new life inside her as a protective reflex. What? She whispered, disbelief and fear tangled together in her tone. You're alive. They want it, the lieutenant said, glancing at Aiden. It's tied to everything you've built. She's the target. Aiden's eyes narrowed, ice cold. The protective aura around him intensified, radiating pure danger. He was no longer just a man walking through the city. He was a storm, a predator, a force that would not allow harm to touch the woman and children he had once abandoned. Emily's legs weakened beneath her. The weight of the revelation hit her like a hammer. She had survived everything on her own, built a life of power and independence, and yet now, she realized danger had found her. Always lurking, always patient, always deadly. Emily, Aiden's voice was low, almost a growl. Listen to me. You are not safe. Not here, not anywhere. We move. Now, she tried to stand, but the adrenaline surge combined with the fear was too much. Her knees buckled. I can't, she whispered, voice trembling. I won't go back. Not yet. Aiden's expression softened for the briefest moment, an almost imperceptible flicker of vulnerability before the steel returned. He crouched, arms opening instinctively, catching her as she collapsed. Then you stay here. With me, he said, voice firm, yet tinged with something deeper: regret, longing, and an unspoken promise. Emily leaned against him, body trembling, heart racing. The city continued around them, oblivious to the storm of violence, fear, and truth that had just collided with her life. Aiden shifted slightly, ensuring she was shielded behind him, his presence a protective barrier. His eyes never left the streets, scanning, calculating, predicting every move of an enemy he hadn't yet identified but already understood in instinctual terms. Tell me, Emily murmured, voice weak but steady, who wants me dead? Aiden shook his head slowly, jaw tight, lips pressing into a thin line. I don't know yet, but I will find out. And when I do, his voice trailed off, the unspoken threat carrying more weight than any gun. Her mind raced. She had survived on her own, but now the past she thought she had left behind had returned with lethal precision. Her life, her children, her independence, everything she had fought to protect was now under direct threat. Aiden sensed her panic, her exhaustion, her need for grounding. His hand brushed her hair back, fingers pressing briefly against her temple, a silent gesture of reassurance and claim. Stay close. Stay alive. Trust me, he murmured, voice low, almost intimate. Emily nodded, clinging to him, feeling both fear and comfort in equal measure. She could feel the weight of his presence, the raw power and dangerous authority that had once drawn her to him, now magnified by the reality of the threat pressing down on them from the shadows. Aiden's men moved, forming a tight perimeter. Vehicles idled, engines silent, ready to whisk them away at a moment's notice. The night was alive with potential threats, every shadow a possible sniper, every alleyway a possible ambush. Emily pressed herself closer to him, instinct and survival blending with an unspoken recognition. The man she had once loved, the man who had left her, was now the only shield between her and death. The rain began to fall lightly, tapping against the sidewalk, glittering in the neon glow. The city's pulse was relentless, unforgiving, and yet in that moment, all she could feel was the immediacy of life and the protective heat radiating from Aiden. Boss, one of his men whispered, tense, they're coordinating. This isn't random. It's planned. Whoever wants her, they're methodical. They won't stop until they get what they came for. Aiden's jaw tightened, blue eyes flashing with lethal intensity. Then we make sure they fail. Every last one of them. Emily's mind struggled to comprehend. Danger, fear, chaos all collided into a storm she had no control over. And yet, in the midst of it, she realized something. She wasn't alone anymore. The man who had once abandoned her was here, standing with her, protecting her, fighting for her. Her knees weakened further as the adrenaline crashed, and she leaned fully into him, surrendering to both the fear and the comfort of his presence. Aiden's arms tightened around her, his voice a low rumble meant only for her. You don't leave my side. Not now. Not ever. A car screeched in the distance. Figures emerged from the shadows, armed, moving with precise coordination. Aiden's eyes narrowed. One of them stepped forward, weapon raised. And the night erupted in a deadly countdown. Emily's life, and the secrets she had built. were about to collide with the full fury of the underworld, and nothing would survive unscathed. The sterile scent of antiseptic filled the room, sharp and unrelenting. Emily's eyes fluttered open, the harsh fluorescent lights blurring into streaks across the walls. Her head throbbed with every heartbeat, dizziness washing over her like a tidal wave. She tried to lift her arm, but weakness pinned her to the hospital bed. Every movement sent shivers through her, and panic bubbled beneath the surface. Then she saw him, Aiden, not beside her bed, not touching her, but stationed at the door like a sentinel. His posture was rigid, trained, unyielding. Yet even as he scanned the room, fingers slightly trembling, there was a softness in his gaze she hadn't expected, vulnerability bleeding through the veneer of control. He didn't move toward her immediately. He didn't need to. The intensity in his eyes spoke volumes, a mixture of fear, anger, and relief. Every muscle coiled, every thought silent but sharp. "Emily," he said, voice low, clipped. "Talk to me. Right now. What happened?" Her lips parted, but no words came. She swallowed, her throat dry, fear tightening its grip around her chest. "I said, talk to me," he snapped, sharper this time. But a tremor betrayed the storm inside him. She shook her head, weakly, determinedly. Fear rooted her words to the floor. She wouldn't give him the satisfaction of panic, the confirmation of danger he already feared. Aiden stepped closer, the faint scent of his cologne filling the small room. He stood over her, a mountain of protective fury and restrained emotion. "You don't get to stay silent," he growled, voice breaking just slightly. "I lost you once. I'm not losing you again." The words cracked through his armor like a bullet. His lips pressed into a thin line, jaw tight. For the first time in years, Emily saw the man behind the facade, not the untouchable mafia boss, not the cold predator who walked away to protect an empire, but the boy who had loved her, terrified of losing what he couldn't control. Her heart faltered. Almost, she wanted to tell him everything about the threats, the danger, the shadow that had stalked her for months, about the life she had rebuilt alone, the twins she protected, and the fear that never left her chest. But fear held her tongue. Not fear of him, but fear of what would come next. What if revealing everything brought more danger, more violence? What if she couldn't protect herself? Or her children? Aiden's gaze softened for a heartbeat, and in that fleeting second, Emily almost spoke, almost bridged the chasm of silence between them. "You're hurting," she whispered finally, voice cracked. You shouldn't carry it all." "I don't care," he snapped, though the tremor in his hand betrayed him. "Not anymore. You mean more than any empire, any power, any rule I've ever claimed." Emily's chest tightened. Her eyes burned. She wanted to reach for him, to let herself fall into the protection and warmth he radiated, but she couldn't. Not yet. The door opened slightly, and the faint click of shoes echoed in the room. Emily's pulse spiked. A nurse entered first, glancing nervously between the bed and Aiden. Then the doctor appeared, face grave, eyes scanning the room before settling on her. "Miss Hart," the doctor said, voice low but urgent. "We need to talk." Privately, Aiden's eyes flicked to the doctor, sharp, unreadable. The protective edge sharpened further. His jaw clenched. "Not out there," he said, voice iron. "In here, now." The doctor hesitated, then nodded, stepping closer to the bed. Emily's heart raced. She glanced at Aiden. He was tense, fingers curling into fists, yet his eyes never left her. "You don't leave my side," he whispered. Almost a growl, almost a plea. Emily nodded, barely able to breathe. She could feel the weight of his presence, the aura of danger and loyalty that had once drawn her to him now keeping her alive. The doctor's tone dropped further. "It's serious," he said, his gaze flicking between them. "We need to discuss the complications and the risks." Now, Emily felt the world tilt beneath her. The hospital walls closed in. Her stomach churned with dread, adrenaline, and fear for her unborn children. She could feel Aiden stiffen beside her, his protective instincts flaring as he prepared for whatever news awaited them. You, stay, he murmured again, lips brushing the edge of her hair. No one touches you. No one. Do you understand? Her throat tightened, but she nodded, leaning slightly into him for support, even as panic clawed at her chest. Aiden's eyes were fixed on the doctor, calculating, scanning, analyzing. Every instinct, every shred of training, every ounce of power he commanded was now focused on ensuring Emily and the children were safe. Her pulse raced. His presence was comforting, terrifying, and intoxicating all at once. She could feel the tension in his body, the suppressed fury, the desperation to protect, to control, to fix what he had once broken. The doctor swallowed, glancing nervously at the man standing guard. This is serious, he repeated. Complications could be severe if we don't act immediately. Emily's chest tightened. She wanted to speak, to ask questions, to defy fate as she always had. But fear and uncertainty held her in place. Aiden's hand brushed her shoulder, fingers pressing lightly, grounding her. We'll face it together, he murmured, voice low, steady, but quivering with emotion. Whatever it is, we face it. I'm not leaving again. Do you hear me? Emily nodded, feeling a strange mixture of relief, fear, and longing. She wanted to trust him completely, to collapse into his arms and let the world fall away. But the doctor's gaze reminded her, the danger was far from over, and then, the last shred of calm shattered, the door to the room clicked again, and another figure entered, this one unannounced, masked in shadow. Intent unmistakable in their steps, Aiden stiffened instantly, eyes narrowing, body coiling for action. Emily's heart jumped into her throat, fear and adrenaline mingling into a single, sharp spike of panic. The air became electric with tension. Time seemed to slow. Every heartbeat, every breath, every movement was amplified, and the room became a battlefield waiting to erupt. The doctor froze, eyes wide, whispering urgently. That wasn't a staff member. Someone's here, and they're coming for her. Aiden's blue eyes snapped to Emily, lethal and unyielding, voice low but deadly. Not in this room. Not tonight. No one touches her, and the shadow in the doorway moved closer, signaling that the real fight for Emily, for the twins, for their fragile chance at life and love was about to begin. The hallway outside the private room felt like a prison. Every second Aiden Cross waited, the world pressed against him with an unbearable weight. The fluorescent lights hummed overhead, a dull, constant reminder of every choice he had ever made, every mistake, every absence. He leaned against the wall, shoulders tense, fingers gripping the cool metal of the railing. Minutes stretched endlessly, each heartbeat louder than the last. The sterile smell of antiseptic, the faint echo of distant footsteps, and the low murmur of hospital staff filled the oppressive silence. For the first time in years, he felt powerless. Outside, the city pulsed with life, indifferent to the storm raging in his chest. He could control armies, empires, and fear itself, but not the fragility of the life waiting behind that door. The doctor appeared, brisk, professional, but his eyes betrayed urgency. Mr. Cross, you may come in, he said, voice low. Aiden's jaw tightened. He nodded, not trusting himself to speak. His mind raced, replaying every moment he had missed, every heartbeat of Emily's life, every step of the children's first years, every moment he could never get back. He opened the door slowly, almost tentatively, and froze. The world stopped. There, sitting on the hospital bed, were Emily, Hart, and two toddlers. Two small lives with eyes that mirrored his own, the piercing, quiet intensity of blue that seemed to look right into his soul. Emily sat upright, composed, unwavering, the children beside her like twin pillars of strength. She didn't flinch. She didn't waver. She didn't need to. These are your children, she said softly, yet each word cut deeper than any blade. You left us before you even knew. Aiden's hands gripped the doorframe so tightly his knuckles whitened. Breath left him in a violent rush, chest tightening, heart hammering in his ribcage like it wanted to break free. The children, oblivious to the storm brewing behind their innocent eyes, reached for her hand, fingers curling around hers. The sight struck Aiden with an intensity that stole his voice. He sank to his knees, not in dramatic defeat, not in theatrical despair, just devastation so raw it almost crushed him. The boy he had been, the man he had become, and the monster he had feared, he was all collided in this one impossible moment. Emily's gaze remained steady, unflinching. She was a fortress, a woman forged from pain, resilience, and love tempered by betrayal, yet unbroken. Aiden tried to speak. Words formed, broke apart, shattered on his tongue. Every phrase seemed insufficient, every apology meaningless against the magnitude of absence and lost years. He began, voice raw, hoarse. I can't. Emily's eyes softened, just for a fraction of a second, and in that moment, he saw it. The mixture of love, anger, disappointment, and strength that defined her. You left, she said simply. And now, you face what you abandoned. The room was thick with silence. Even the children, sensing the tension, watched him with quiet curiosity, untainted by years of betrayal. Their small hands fidgeted with the sheets, fingers curling nervously, their tiny hearts beating in oblivious trust. Aiden's hands moved to the bed, trembling slightly as he reached toward them, then froze. He couldn't touch them yet. He couldn't risk his overwhelming emotions drowning them in chaos. He whispered again, voice breaking. I didn't know. Emily shook her head, resolute. You didn't care to know, she corrected softly, though her voice carried the weight of controlled fury and heartbreak. Aiden's shoulders slumped, a storm of grief and regret pressing down on him. He felt the crushing weight of the years lost, the laughter missed, the milestones stolen. Every heartbeat screamed his failure, every breath reminded him of the world he had abandoned. But before the words could continue, before the conversation could unravel any further, the sharp, blaring sound of alarms pierced the room. Red lights flashed along the walls. The shrill tone of danger cut through the fragile calm like a razor. Aiden's eyes snapped to the door, muscles tensing, instincts firing. He pushed himself up, standing protectively in front of Emily and the children, a wall of living steel. Emily stiffened beside him, fear and resolve mixing in equal measure. She had faced threats before, survived on her own, but the intensity of the danger now was undeniable. Stay behind me, Aiden commanded, voice low, deadly, unwavering. Do not move. Do not make a sound. The children clung to Emily, instinctively seeking safety. Her hand covered theirs, squeezing gently, grounding them, even as panic surged through her chest. Aiden's gaze swept the room, sharp and precise. Every shadow, every flicker of movement, every sound was analyzed. His empire of control, honed through years of power and fear, now focused entirely on one mission: protect Emily, protect the children, survive. The hospital door creaked. Slowly, intentionally, a figure emerged in the threshold, silhouetted against the harsh fluorescent light. Every step was deliberate, calculated, and ominous. Aiden's hand moved to the gun at his hip, but he didn't draw it yet. Not until he fully understood the threat. Every instinct screamed danger. Every ounce of training prepared him for the inevitable clash. Emily's hand tightened around the twins' small fingers. Fear raced through her, but beneath it, a strange thread of trust ran deep. Aiden was here. He was theirs. And he would fight. The figure stepped forward, and the overhead lights revealed a mask of determination, a weapon in hand, and an unmistakable intent to claim what wasn't theirs. Aiden's chest heaved with controlled fury, blue eyes flashing like twin blades. His mind raced, mapping escape routes, analyzing angles, calculating outcomes with lethal precision. Emily watched him, heart in her throat, awe and terror intertwined. The man she had loved, the boy who had walked away, the ruthless boss who had built empires from fear. He was here, present, unstoppable, ready to confront the storm for her and their children. The air in the hospital room seemed to thrum with tension. Every heartbeat echoed like a drum, Every breath carried the weight of inevitable confrontation. Emily whispered, barely audible, "Aiden, what do we do?" He didn't answer immediately. His eyes stayed locked on the intruder, muscles coiled, every nerve alive. Then, his voice dropped low, deadly, unwavering. "Whatever it takes. Whatever happens. I will not let them take you. Not tonight. Not ever." The intruder raised their weapon, stepped slow but confident, and in that frozen moment, time itself seemed to suspend. The children clutched Emily closer, her heart racing, and Aiden's eyes blazed with a mixture of fury, fear, and unspoken desperation. The hospital corridor outside was quiet, too controlled. The calm before a storm that promised destruction, and then, the sound of footsteps multiplied. From both ends of the corridor, shadows moved, converging toward the room. Aiden shifted, motioning for Emily to step behind him, body tense, ready to strike. The intruder's voice echoed coldly, metallic and chilling. "Mr. Cross, this is your choice. Protect them, or lose everything." Aiden's blue eyes narrowed, jaw clenched. The hands that had once built empires now gripped the gun with lethal intent. The fight for Emily, the twins, and their fragile chance at life and redemption was about to erupt. The hospital's secure wing was a fortress. Thick doors, armed guards, surveillance cameras, every angle covered. Aiden Cross moved Emily and the twins inside with military precision, his protective instincts sharper than ever. Emily held the children close, their small hands gripping her tightly. Fear was etched on their innocent faces, but Aiden's presence radiated an unspoken promise. No harm would come to them while he was near. "Stay here," he said, voice low, dangerous, final. "I'll handle this." Emily wanted to protest, wanted to argue, but she didn't. She had learned enough about him over the years to know that when Aiden said something, it wasn't a request. It was a command, one born of love, obsession, and a relentless need to protect. Aiden left the room, moving through dimly lit corridors with a predator's grace. Every step, every glance, every sound was calculated. He wasn't just hunting a sniper, he was hunting the truth. His mind replayed every angle, every clue from the hospital attack. He knew it wasn't random. Someone had targeted Emily, and they had planned it meticulously, with lethal intent. Hours passed. Aiden moved like a shadow through the city, tracking, confronting, interrogating. Violence whispered at the edges of his path, but he didn't give in to recklessness. Every move was precise, every strike calculated. He wanted answers. He wanted the sniper, and he wanted the truth Emily had kept from him, the secret of why her life had been marked for death. The night stretched into early morning. Rain-slicked streets reflected neon like shattered glass. Aiden's blue eyes burned with fury, determination, and a storm of emotions he couldn't name. When he finally returned to the secure wing, his body bore the evidence of the hunt: bruises, scratches, blood smeared along his knuckles. But his eyes, icy and sharp, carried a message that didn't need words. Justice would come. Emily watched him enter, heart racing, fear and relief mingling. She saw the damage on his body, yet the aura of dominance, the untouchable power he carried, remained. He was lethal. He was unstoppable. He stopped a few feet from her, breath heavy, jaw clenched. The twins clung to her, sensing the tension in the room, yet unaware of the full scope of danger that had shadowed their lives for months. Aiden's gaze softened briefly as he looked at them, but it hardened the instant he turned back to Emily. "The attack," he began, voice low, deliberate, controlled, "wasn't about me." Emily stiffened. Her pulse quickened. "It was about you. And your company," he continued, eyes locking with hers, blue burning like ice and fire. "Someone from your world, your business tried to end you. For money, for power, for revenge." Emily's lips parted, silent. Fear, anger, and shock warred within her. She knew exactly who was behind this. She had seen the signs, the threats, the calculated attempts to destabilize her empire. But now, hearing it confirmed by Aiden, the weight of the danger pressed down on her chest like a vice. Aiden's eyes never left hers, piercing, demanding. "Tell me everything," he said. "Now. I want it all. No lies. No half-truths." She swallowed, hesitated, then nodded. Her voice was barely above a whisper. She stopped, trembling. "It's Donovan. Victor Donovan. He's been trying to ruin me, destroy me. Since the day you left. He knows I survived. He knows I've built something you didn't protect me for. He wants it all. He'll stop at nothing." Aiden's jaw tightened. Fury and ice collided in his gaze. Blue eyes flashed like twin blades of vengeance. "You're going to regret touching her," he muttered. Low, dangerous, a vow and a threat wrapped into one. Emily pressed her hands over the twins. Heart pounding, yet a small spark of hope flickered. He was here. He was hers. And for the first time, she realized that no one, no enemy, no assassin could reach her while Aiden was alive. He moved closer, voice dropping to a dangerous growl. "I will make him pay. Every last one of them. He won't see the next sunrise." Her heart ached at the combination of his fury and devotion. Years of abandonment, pain, and betrayal now met with relentless protection, and in that storm, she felt something she hadn't in a long time. Safety. But then, his phone vibrated. A message. Unknown number. He didn't read it immediately. His eyes, sharp and calculating, met hers, warning unspoken in their intensity. Finally, he opened it. The words burned like acid across his vision. "You can't protect her. She was marked the moment she left you." Aiden's fingers tightened around the device, knuckles widening. His body tensed, every instinct screaming danger. The calm, controlled fury he had maintained snapped into something darker, more primal. Emily's eyes widened, fear and disbelief mixing. She knew the meaning behind those words, the relentless danger that had shadowed her life, now intensified. Aiden's voice dropped to a deadly whisper, freezing the air between them. "Then we end this." Before it ends her, the twins clung to Emily, sensing tension but unaware of the full scope of the threat. The room became a crucible of fear, love, and impending violence. Outside the secure wing, the city hummed, oblivious. But within these walls, a storm of vengeance, danger, and dark love was about to collide. The unknown number sent another message, this time accompanied by a single chilling line. "She was always mine to take. And tonight, she will be." Aiden's blue eyes flared, cold and lethal. His hand went to his weapon. Emily's pulse raced. The night had only just begun. Rain-slicked streets reflected the city lights like molten glass. Emily Hart's coat clung to her shoulders as she held the twins close, their small hands gripping hers tightly. Every step she took was cautious, measured, but behind her, Aiden Cross moved with silent intensity, a living shield. The hospital behind them faded into the night, a temporary haven now abandoned for the uncertainty of the streets. Aiden's presence was a constant weight at her side, protective, commanding, and unwavering. She glanced at him, her eyes searching the familiar, dangerous face she had once loved, left, and now feared she could not live without. The twins shifted in her arms, sensing the tension and finding comfort in her warmth. "If you want this," she said quietly, voice steady but carrying the weight of every betrayal, every heartbreak, "you fight clean. No more lies. No more secrets." Aiden's blue eyes locked on hers. The fury and darkness within him simmered beneath a veneer of control, but in that moment, there was clarity, a vow unspoken yet carved into the very fiber of his being. He nodded once, sharply, the movement absolute, final. A promise forged not in words, but in bone and blood, in loyalty and love tempered by fire. They stepped into the city night, blending with shadows, moving with purpose. Every instinct in Aiden screamed vigilance. He knew danger had not disappeared. The recent threats, Donovan's defeat, they were only the beginning. Emily drew in a shuddering breath. The twins pressed closer, tiny hearts beating against hers. You're different," she whispered. "The man I thought I lost, he's here now." Aiden's jaw tightened. "I'm always here," he replied, voice low, dangerous, and certain. I'll never leave you again. For a brief, fleeting moment, the chaos of the past seemed to fall away. The rain tapped softly on the streets, the city hummed quietly, and the promise of a fragile peace lingered, but shadows never truly disappear. Across the street, hidden in the dim glow of a flickering streetlight, a figure observed them. Not a mafia rival, not a mercenary trained in the arts of fear, no. This was something more subtle, more insidious, a man in a tailored coat, posture relaxed yet calculating, phone in hand, eyes sharp as they tracked every movement of the Cross family as they emerged from the hospital. They're together, he murmured, voice low, deliberate. She trusts him again. The woman is weak in her love. We move to phase 2, a woman's voice, sharp, cold, and commanding, replied through the phone. Good. The Cross family must never rise. Finish what Aiden's enemies couldn't. Make sure they regret every heartbeat they take together. The man's lips curved slightly in a thin, dangerous smile. He nodded once, eyes still fixed on Emily and the twins. Then, silently, he vanished into the darkness, a ghost of a threat waiting to strike when least expected. Emily walked forward, unaware of the eyes that followed. The twins giggled softly, oblivious to the storm that lingered beyond the glow of streetlights. Aiden adjusted his coat, scanning every shadow, every alley, instincts razor sharp. Emily, he murmured, his voice low and steady, yet carrying an unspoken warning. No matter what comes, I protect you. Always. She looked up at him, eyes glistening, rain-soaked hair plastered to her face. And I'll fight with you, she whispered, determination woven into every syllable. No more running, no more hiding. We do this together. Their hands brushed, fingers intertwined. A promise of trust, fragile yet fierce, forming in the cold night air. The city seemed to exhale for a heartbeat. And in that instant, Aiden allowed himself a flicker of hope that perhaps the past could be redeemed, that the family he had abandoned could be whole again. But fate, as it always did, had other plans. A shadow moved across a nearby building's rooftop, swift, precise. The man from Emily's company had allies, carefully placed, watching, waiting for the signal. A network of silent threats stretched unseen, woven into the city's heartbeat. Emily glanced up at Aiden, eyes searching. Do you feel it? She asked softly, her voice barely above the rain. He didn't answer immediately. Instead, his gaze cut across the street, sharp, calculating, a predator sensing danger beyond sight. Every muscle coiled, every thought racing. The storm was far from over. The man on the rooftop spoke again into his phone. Phase 2 is active. They trust him. That makes them vulnerable. Move, a woman's voice hissed back, final and lethal. Do not fail. The Cross family cannot rise. Remove the threat before it strengthens. Emily felt a shiver run through her spine, tiny hands gripping Aiden's arm. He held her closer, unyielding, protective. Every instinct screaming that the danger was closer than she realized. Whatever comes, he whispered into her ear. Voice low, deadly, yet intimate, we face it together. No one touches you. No one touches them. Not tonight. Not ever. The twins giggled softly between them, innocent and unaware. A stark contrast to the tension threading through the city. Aiden's gaze narrowed. I see blue scanning the shadows, streets, rooftops, the invisible threads of threat. The promise of peace was temporary, fragile. The enemy had evolved, and the Cross family's survival would demand more than strength. Emily's hand rested on his chest, feeling the pulse beneath, steady, unwavering. Then we fight, she said, voice quiet but resolute. Together, the rain fell harder. The neon lights blurred into streaks across the pavement. The city seemed quiet, yet the silence was alive with intent. The tension of unseen eyes watching every move. The camera of fate lingered on the Cross family as they walked forward, shadows long, hearts intertwined. Unaware that the war was far from over, the screen fades to black as the woman's voice echoes one final time over the phone. Cold, deliberate. make sure they regret every heartbeat they take together. Phase 2 begins now, and somewhere, in the darkness beyond the city, a new, unseen enemy watches, calculating, patient, and deadly. The threat is no longer just the Mafia, but a shadow from Emily's world, waiting for the perfect moment to strike.